Welcome to Reflections, a program where we discuss values and virtues for the transformation of the individual and the society in general. I am Father George Ehusani, and I have with me in the studio again our friend Clem Nwankwo, Executive Director of PLAC, Policy
and Legal Advocacy Center.
Policy and Legal Advocacy Center. You see, because you have been chairman and director of so many agencies, TMG, CLO, CRP, Situation Room. I mean, man of many parts. We have Clem with us once again, and we're discussing matters arising with the elections. This time, where do we go from here, especially with, in point of view of the fact that we have in the next few days again, we have another election. We have the gubernatorial state level elections. And right now, a lot of young people who flooded the polling units at this time are discouraged. What do we tell our young people for them to have any measure of confidence in the system?
Father, I did get a call from some organization of young people in my village community in Imo State who were saying what should they do for March 11th with the state assembly elections. Imo doesn't have a governorship elections because they don't trust the INEC in the state, and they don't trust INEC they see at the headquarters, that they are not inclined to coming out to vote. And I said to them, if you are angry about what happened, that's what the intention was, to get you angry, to get a certain result. You would help them to achieve a completion of that result when you abstain from the March 11 vote. Yes, there will be legal challenges to the February 25th presidential and national assembly elections. That process will go on its own, but you also don't want to allow an easy ride for the perpetrators of this evil. So you must mobilize people and be strategic in terms of how you prepare for the March 11 elections. And that's my message to everyone who voted on February 25th, and indeed everyone who couldn't get to vote because of the disruptions to the system, that you should be even more mobilized, you should be even more angry and persuaded to come out and vote for the state level elections, because then the pressures that have been put on by the vocal voices that are speaking now, the questions that have been asked, would mean that perhaps that pressure would push back on the evil that has been perpetrated. So I ask people to come out and vote in the next elections.
Yeah, it has been a tough task for us, even beginning from the people in this studio, to speak to them about the fact that, look, don't lose hope. You know, many of these people were not alive in 1993, you know, in 1983 to 1999, during the struggle through military rule. So they believe that, oh, we came out in October 2020, SARS, and we were crushed. Then they told us that you can't change things on the streets. You have to go to the ballot box. Then we came out February 25th to the ballot boxes, and it's been crushed again. So they are saying to us there is no hope.
Father, the analogy here is that when the dictator, General Ibrahim Babangida, was perambulating with Nigeria's destiny in his experimental transition programs, he disqualified candidates, he banned parties, he created new parties, and a lot of us in civil society said, we don't want to do anything, we don't want to have anything to do with your parties and your political shenanigans. So we just want the military out. They organized and created two parties and asked politicians to get into those parties, the SDP, NRC, and people like Abiola entered SDP, and we said we're not interested. Abiola is part of the ruling class. But Abiola won the elections, and we had to re-strategize and said to ourselves, that is one mechanism for getting rid of the military dictatorship. And the agitations began. And of course, unfortunately, Abiola died. But we continued that until Sani Abacha, the brutal dictator, died. And when he died, the clamor by civil society meant that the succeeding military had to commit to
Immediate
a new
transition.
election program, and they instituted what was called the Transition Monitoring Program. And you're right when you talk of the Transition Monitoring Group. That's why we created the Transition Monitoring Group in 1998 to observe that elections, and that led to the beginning of democracy that saw President Olusegun Obasanjo emerge. So I think that we cannot disengage from the process. Yes, we are angry about what happened February 25th. We are angry about INEC and its compromise and its incompetence and mischief. But after the elections on March 11, we will have to interrogate Nigeria's election and the reforms that are needed.
Everything needs to be audited. Seriously.
So we need to audit everything. We need to know what happened with the elections of February 25th and again with the March 11 elections. Ask questions. INEC must be held to account. We must also ask some of the issues surrounding the elections, the insecurity, the suppression of votes that we saw in certain parts of the country, where people of certain ethnic groups were being frustrated from voting,
all on video,
where there was violence, where INEC itself was retweeting tweets that was castigating a particular candidate. All of these issues are things to interrogate. And the whole question about why does this country not have a mechanism to hold politicians to account, to hold people to account? For several years now, and this began since the creation of the Electoral Reform Committee that was headed by Justice Uwais. If you remember in 2007, that was one of the most horrible elections in this country, to which you can compare the 2023 general elections. Once that election held, President Yar'Adua, who emerged,
he confessed,
and God bless his soul, confessed. Well, he didn't confess, agreed that the elections were lacking in credibility, and that was why he set up the Uwais Committee. And reform suggestions were made, and one of those reforms was, of course, the mode of appointment of election INEC commissioners and chairman. Unfortunately, there has been no improvement on that process. So just before the general elections, you did see partisan political elements appointed into INEC. So you went into a 2023 general elections with compromised officials. Secondly, there was a recommendation about creating what is called the Electoral Offences Commission. And that Electoral Offences Commission was supposed to have a commission created to now apprehend election offenders and prosecute them. Unfortunately, the bill on this has been sitting in National Assembly for years. So if we are to go forward post 2023 elections, the current National Assembly, the 9th Assembly, has to pass that bill. Unfortunately, President Buhari has left no legacy on electoral reform. Unfortunately, we thought
this is the biggest legacy he was living.
Given that we have to search to find what legacy he has for the 8 years he's been in office, we thought that if he could manage electoral reforms, if he could achieve elections that was credible, that perhaps he would have been forgiven for the failings. And up to the
last day, he kept promising.
He kept promising, but of course, you know what he said after the elections concluded, which tells you that there's a difference in what he says and what gets to happen. So I think that the National Assembly, the 9th National Assembly, because almost 80% of them are not coming back, which goes to the point that they created an electoral act which could have helped to bring them back, but it was too late. The reforms could not be implemented, nor were they in time enough to provide a level playing field for even the architects of a new electoral act to have a fair process. So today we are going to suffer from a new National Assembly. Those who should have held the electoral process to account failed and are out of the legislative process.
In a few days, Clem, we have the state level elections. And then going forward, Nigerians don't carry weapons. Individual Nigerians rely on the state to protect them. So you said perhaps in our earlier discussion that the missing link was that we didn't tell the people sufficiently to protect their votes after they have voted. Now they voted, They had it counted. In fact, they chorused the count, and then they, when they finished, they saw it recorded. They witnessed it recorded, and it was left for the INEC person to upload. And they left. In some places, some people witnessed that it was not uploaded. And they kept harassing the young people. They upload this thing. It wasn't uploaded. What could they have done?
Well, first of all, INEC provided training very late. And in a lot of instances, provided no training at all for the ad hoc staff that they deployed to the field. So it's even a question. What was the level of preparedness of INEC, even if they told us they were prepared for the elections?
Now, you are talking of training of the staff.
That would upload the result sheets.
But from what we are hearing, the server was not available, open for them, a lot of them to open, which is why 24 hours after the elections ended, only a handful of results were uploaded.
Yes, but the beavers were supposed to be configured, staff trained to understand that configuration to upload. Yes. Whether the server is open or not, and whether it is open to connect to cloud to pick up what has been uploaded from the beavers.
You can send.
But you can at least send. And that didn't happen in millions, in hundreds of thousands of places. So clearly someone within INEC knew what they were doing, knew that the promises about beavers was empty promises, and that the choreographed plan was different from what was being said to the public.
Tell me, what do you think could have happened? 2019, we had what? We had how many million? Up to 80 million.
We had 84 million
in the voters register.
In the voters register.
This time we had 90 something, and those who collected their voters cards were 87 point something million. Now, and then I have never seen in my lifetime the number of young people that went to vote. I've never seen it in my lifetime. How come that total vote counted 25 million?
Father, it was across the demography of the country that people of all ages came out. In the polling unit where I eventually voted, people provided generator. People bought food for the INEC staff and drinks.
Did you see in Lekki that they actually had like a bazaar? They had food and drinks for everybody that came.
So everybody came out with determination. And something I must say about the security services, there were lapses, but this is the best performance by Nigeria's security in any election. There were lapses, but this is the best, whether it's the police or the army. So most of the problem must be focused
on INEC.
People did not feel threatened. In the southeast, what happened? People were being killed days before just because they were going to vote. But on day of election, citizens came out and said, whoever you are that is committing this suppression of votes. And we must look at the southeast to ask the question, who was actually doing what was being done?
Because on election day, we saw nothing.
On election day,
it happened peacefully in most places.
It was peaceful. So the question is, who was killing people? Who was kidnapping people? Don't tell me it's some unknown gunmen. The gunmen, perhaps, are known. In two of the states in the southeast, particularly in one state, Imo State, where there has been incredible violence, who is responsible for it? Who is responsible for it? Is the state in Imo, is the government in Imo complicit in it? Those are questions we must ask. And if they are complicit, what is the purpose?
Back to our discussion. What do we do? What do we tell young people to do going forward? Because there is an election that is still upcoming.
Young people, everyone needs to know that the next elections are crucial. They are what you call local elections. Every politics is local.
What do we tell them for them to know
they need to come out and vote?
They are secure.
They need to come out and vote. They need to prepare to defend their votes. They are not those perpetrating this evil. As a common jingle goes on in some of the local stations, are not spirits. They are human beings.
So in Lagos, where some non-indigens are harassed and intimidated with people carrying guns, how do they defend themselves?
Well, I think, again, we can't say to people just come out and not care about the consequences. We have to say to people, stick together. We have to say to the security agencies, come out and do your job, because people have a right to vote. The Constitution is very clear. If you have lived in a place for 5 years, you are indeed entitled to come out and contest for elections. If you have lived in a place,
voting, yes.
If you have lived in a place, to contest elections.
Yes.
If you have lived in a place for 1 month and that's where you registered, you have a right to vote.
Yes.
So nobody should describe indigens or non-indigens. That's completely out of it. Every part of this country means that every Nigerian is entitled to exercise.
We either have a country or we don't.
Yeah, to exercise citizenship. And some of those who were governors in Lagos at the beginning of this Fourth Republic, some of them were not indigens of Lagos.
Yeah.
The first governors in Lagos in this Fourth Republic are not indigens of Lagos. Several commissioners, several senators, several house members are not indigens of Lagos, yet they contested elections. So the idea that you describe certain people as non-indigens and deprive them of their citizenship rights
the law
is
doesn't
completely
recognize that.
unacceptable.
Yes. So what hope do you give to people who are distraught today, disillusioned, depressed? As a lawyer, what hope do you give to them that perhaps if this 2023 February 25 presidency election goes to court, that there is any hope of the wishes of the people being coming to reign, the wishes of the people, of the majority of people?
Well, we hope that the judges understand again. And, when you look at the court system, as a lawyer, I'm certainly very conscious of the need for the institution to be well protected. But when you look at what happened in the Supreme Court verdict regarding the Imo governorship elections in January of 2020,
it casts doubts in the minds of people.
It questions the judiciary severely. So we hope that judges who are in the courts understand that what we are looking at here is how to save this country. And they have to, nobody's asking them to do anything outside of the law.
Outside of the law.
We're saying, look at what the law says, look at the facts presented before you, and reach judgments that are just and good for the future and prosperity of this country.
Somebody was saying, I heard on TV, somebody was saying that to remove a president that you have given a certificate of return, to remove that person, that the kind of evidences that the court will be requiring in order to declare that the election was substantially, non-compliant, that's what you require to prove beyond reasonable doubt that that election is not credible. That is so much that it is almost impossible.
No, I think that because judges have come to this state of mind, and I think even citizens, that the country would collapse if the justices of courts administer justice.
That the country will collapse if justice.
Yes,
the country is supposed to be sitting on justice.
Yes, I think that has been all of the attitude regarding election petitions in this country, and this needs to change. In Kenya, and we had Uhuru Kenyatta here observing these elections. You saw what happened in Kenya. The courts in Kenya intervened.
Yes.
And gave justice. Even the person that eventually took over as president in Kenya was subjected to criminal prosecution at the International Criminal Court. And he attended the trial as sitting president of Kenya. Of course, he was exonerated by the ICC, but he subjected himself to the rule of law. The Nigerian courts need to begin to understand
and to remind Nigerians, he had to answer for the violence that erupted following his election.
Yeah.
So even though it could not be credited to him that he took gun and shot anybody, but because some people died in some villages over the election, he had to be prosecuted.
Yeah.
So this is it, that the hope that we have is that we have a judicial system. We have a judicial system, and that the lawyers and judges will get to work, and that they will not rely only on technicalities. Because if it is only technicalities that you rely on, then justice will not be served.
Father, even if it is technicalities, the technicalities of managing elections have not been fulfilled. The process have not been fulfilled. But beyond that, how could you upload senatorial and House of Reps results and you didn't upload the presidential?
I mean, I don't understand.
How could you announce the results of presidential elections in certain states? As we speak now, National Assembly results have not been announced in some states. So how did you get the figure? And I'm talking of Imo State, which has become the poster boy of mismanagement of our election process, of corruption of election in Nigeria. How could you release presidential results? Presidential results and not National Assembly results.
Everything was done the same.
And it's the same
moment.
beavers. What happened? What's going on?
I mean, as a layman, I am saying that if you told us, and our confidence was built on the fact that the results will be transmitted electronically. That is why we mobilized. That's what we used to mobilize all the young people, the millions of young people that formed 39% of the voters. Then you ended up not transmitting the elections electronically, even as you were announcing the president-elect. Some results are still not coming.
Exactly. A lot of people were disenfranchised. It means that you calculated the presidential results without counting the votes of all.
Yes. So even as I'm not a lawyer, but I already know that this process is flawed.
I mentioned the fact that the 2007 general elections, the presidential election results were announced with only 13 states in. Here, not all the states were in.
No,
not all the votes were in.
We are told that even the IREV, as at the time, 4 a.m. of Wednesday when it was being announced, IREV had only 76% of the results.
So not all results were in. So how did you get your figures? And how come during your announcement of winner, you did not state categorically how what you have announced satisfies the provisions of the Constitution and the Electoral Act?
And your guidelines.
And you went and announced the result. It's a shame. And I think the whole idea that people feel, go ahead, announce the result, let those who lose go to court, shows you the level of impunity.
I thought there was a 7-day window. I mean, what was the hurry to go ahead and announce?
Well, the 7-day window exists because INEC says that if the election was by fraud or violence or whatever, and there are complaints, they will review the reports to then announce results. And I think that if people were alleging fraud, or if people were announcing the announcement of the results in violation of process, that INEC needed to question those complaints. There's no evidence that INEC came out to say, we have received these complaints. And I know some of the complaints were made right on the floor.
Right on the floor of the collation center.
Of the collation center. And then what did INEC do?
Go to court.
I don't think we should despair. I haven't slept very well from the night before the elections when I saw that INEC certainly was going to bungle this. And I think a lot of Nigerians have not slept well.
On this note, I want to congratulate you, Clem, for everything you have been doing for the Nigerian nation since the setting up of the CLO. CLO is what?
1987, Civil Liberties Organization.
Civil Liberties Organization in 1987, and CRP and every agency that you have set up since then. And you have been part of what? You have been part of us in Terra here in our network and advocacy group. You have been part of our efforts. I just pray, may God reward your efforts. at least for the sake of the children and our grandchildren. May the Lord reward these efforts. And to tell young people who are watching us to say, look, do not despair. Things will change. Some changes happen incrementally. A lot, we have already achieved a lot. I mean, the mere fact that 9 months ago, Peter Obi emerged with Labour Party that had hardly anybody. Today, you can say Labour Party has 12 votes. 12 states, PDP 12 states, APC 12 states. I mean, that is already a lot. However, let's come out, let people come out for the state elections to demonstrate that they were indeed cheated at the presidency. But if people get discouraged and go to sit down, then it will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I want to encourage Nigerians to still come out. It has been declared in several parts of the world that democracy is still the best form of government that we have. So let's come out, make the sacrifices again. We pray that this time the security agencies will be more active in protecting the innocent citizen from the criminal. And then those who tend to engage in criminal activities, just know that for short-term gain, you engage in fraud, you engage in all kinds of compromises. Well, it's not going to be good for anyone, including yourself and your own children. So you better do the right thing so that it may be good for all of us. On this note, we bring this program to an end. Clem, thank you very much for your work. Thank you, Father.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.